This episode of TRS is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook at audiblepodcast.com/totallyrad. Today on the show, we discuss HBO's adaptation of Game of Thrones.
So we are back in TV, and Jeff is excited because we are finally seeing the pilot episode for the Game of Thrones.
The show that Dan said would never happen.
Almost didn't.
Almost didn't.
But did.
Which just recently got picked up for a second season, so whether you liked it or not, you are going to be seeing a lot of promos while watching HBO.
The good news is, they won't be for Game of Thrones next season. It'll be for Clash of Kings.
Oh, is that what it officially is?
Yeah, well, they're going to change. Yeah, they're going to do the next book in the
by season?
Theoretically, yeah.
Book by season.
But although it's been said that the reason why it was, unless it had been a massive failure, that they were clearly going to do greenlight a second season because of the simple cost of the sets. That is sort of the only way they can actually make any money on this series is to have a second season.
I heard it would never happen.
Well, that's what we all said. So here's the thing. So this is based on the George R.R. Martin book series that we have talked about on the show many times as one of Jeff's favorite books. Squarely set in the sort of fantasy realm, as it were, a la Lord of the Rings or any of those types of things. The first episode is sort of the setup episode, kind of letting everybody know the lore, the lay of the land, who's screwing who physically and mentally. So I'm gonna start with Dan.
Really?
I have a feeling we're gonna know what this guy's gonna say. So Daniel Trachtenberg, George R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones, HBO, what did you think?
Yeah. So Jeff lent me this book to read. I made it about 300 pages in, and I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. And it's hard for me to
keep going after 300 pages of not
I was just
loving.
like, yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of time, and I didn't love the way it's written. Although I know that's like the best thing about it. Jeff loves that, you know.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is I had read this episode, and it struck. I mean, I sure want to kind of Jeff to go first, but I recall almost everything that was said to be the book. I mean, almost everything that happened was like the book to me. Is that accurate?
As I was sitting there watching the show, at one point, with the people I was sitting with, I said a line from the book, and then like 2 seconds later, the guy said like word for word what I said.
It's like a
out loud.
screenplay almost. I mean, I can't even. Yeah.
Well, there must be a lot cut out of it, though.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, okay, but anyway.
What did you think?
So, and I liked the series more than I liked the book, only because there's a lot. The book is written in a difficult language, and a lot of characters
English.
have difficult names, and it's in a difficult set. There's like a lot of hats on a hat on a hat on a hat, right?
A lot of multi-layered
by
hats.
seeing it, it's a little bit easier to understand.
Got it.
But even that, with that being said, there's still a lot of like, wait, who's that guy? What's that? You know, whatever. But here's the thing. The show on AMC that we love now, The Killing.
Correct.
And this show have something in common, which is they're execution dependent. The material is like The Killing, you can't pitch that and it sounds like it's just a murder, whatever.
Right.
It's how well it's made that makes it awesome. And for Game of Thrones, it's not awesomely, there's definitely moments that are cool, and I started to really fall into it in the second act, in the second half hour of the pilot. But it's not, the execution isn't amazing, it's not, it's interesting because like this is
TV for you?
This could have been modern day pilot, right? But what's interesting is that it's set in the high fantasy realm of, but the high fantasy stuff isn't awesome looking.
Yeah.
Because it's a little TV-y. It feels like we're in this confined set. Everything feels a little small, whereas what makes the setting so awesome is that it's so huge and otherworldly. So, as we fall in love with characters eventually, hopefully I'll be so swept up with that it won't matter how well it's made. But it's just not. it's okay. It's made okay, but it has to be awesome for me to really love
Interesting. Okay, Jeff, how much did you love this retelling of your favorite story ever told?
You know, I feel like, honestly, I feel like I'm the worst person to give a review of this because it's almost like asking the world's biggest Harry Potter fan to talk about the first Harry Potter movie because all I was doing was
this is that thing that
comparing
I love.
compare. And the comparison holds up pretty well. As Dan pointed out, it is very true to the book, although there's slight tonal differences that may have more to do with my interpretation as I was reading than anything else. Because the first book really, to me, feels like a mystery, and I don't. The way this first episode especially was set up didn't feel like a mystery. But maybe as the series progresses, and hopefully you've all seen the second episode, I'm excited to see the second episode. And I've heard that the first episode is actually the weakest of the first 6. But I agree with you about the TV quality and the confined spaces. Of course, as you read something, your mind has infinite room and grandiosity to,
no budget in your brain.
When you're at the Dothraki wedding, you feel like you can see 40,000 people and they've got, 2 dozen extras.
Yeah.
The sexuality feels more salacious on the show than it ever did in the book. The sexuality is certainly there, and it is certainly a big part of what makes that series what it is, but it certainly felt a little more gratuitous and salacious in the execution on the HBO show. I didn't have a problem with it, but it tonally, I understand why people can recoil a little bit. I'm just thrilled that these characters are realized with great actors, and it seems like they're really deciding to make a true telling of this tale.
Right.
And it's funny that you say difficult names. I think that the biggest strength of Martin is his names. I think he has the best names in all fantasy. The names are so wonderful, but I'm curious what you think.
Can I ask you a quick question before you go? Did you feel any take, did you feel any interpretation that was like, well, that doesn't seem how the book was written, but I see why, it's totally, it's taking this angle on the material? Or did it just feel like it's portraying the...
In the sense that, like I said, I felt like the first book is much more of a mystery, and this really definitely feels like they're setting up good guys and bad guys, and the book does that to a certain extent too, but, I need to see more of the show to really...
Interesting. I was very excited about the fact that this existed. As Dan likes to call it, high fantasy, produced by HBO, which I think that they're all very well talented people at HBO, and they know how to do good stuff. The nudie stuff, to me...
It's classic HBO.
Is classic HBO. Well, that's the thing. I guess a lot of people on Twitter were like, "Whoa, it's too much boobs in George R.R. Martin." And I'm like, one, it's in the book. Two, have you seen Boardwalk Empire? Have you seen any show on any of those
back in the day? It's like, why we tune into HBO?
Yeah.
Like, broad.
Why we tune in?
Yeah, but it's like
come for
really,
the boobs, stay for the story.
Yeah, it's like really. Come on. There were a good amount, but not any more than any other pilot episode. So I was happy.
They were all. It was an even number, which is always good.
Yeah, 6. I don't know. Whatever. Actually, it might have been 6. I am interested in seeing more of this.
Your pitch of your voice.
There was
indicates more.
There was good moments that I enjoyed. All in all, I think I was pretty bored with it. It's a lot of politicky stuff between people I don't even know or have had any time to care about. And right out of the gate, the things that I remember seeing sort of clips from, and I was like, oh man, that looks TV. Some of the wigs are horrible. It's just like, that is the worst wig I've ever seen on a woman in certain situations. So there's a lot of that stuff, and
you saw X-Men, right?
I did actually, and Storm's wig was actually better than the wig on the chick. So the other thing is, I agree with you that you get this when it's clearly digitally done areas. It's like, whoa, those are gigantic. And then all of a sudden, it's small room in the castle, and you're like.
That's how I felt. You see King's Landing, and I was like, oh that's
God,
exactly what I expected to see. And then,
And then you see the closet in King's Landing where they have a conversation for no reason. So. And that's just TV, but I feel like, I was hoping that even extending those sets out virtually, you know what I mean? Like Lord of the Rings, those sets, watching the Hobbit set video, the sets are just as small, it's just that they then use computer. I mean, Boardwalk Empire is a great example.
Better than that is Boardwalk Empire, or even better than that is Battlestar Galactica. The space sequences in Battlestar Galactica are better than movie space sequences. You want the show to do in fantasy what Battlestar Galactica did in sci-fi and space, like be awesome.
Where you don't feel like I'm on a television set that's small.
There are moments
but then
of that. I love seeing the wall. I love seeing.
Yeah. But that's great. That's the stuff where it's.
Cool.
But then it goes to the the knights in a room that's smaller than this garage on the wall.
Are you guys going to continue watching?
Yeah.
I have to.
I am.
I mean, you
I
have
have
to.
to.
Well, no, I mean, as a fantasy person, as a person who's interested in fantasy, you have to watch this show because this is the fantasy.
Did you find it difficult to follow?
No, I just didn't care. I mean, for the most part, there were some moments that were cool, and I knew who was who and who was. I mean, there's some stuff that was like, yeah. I mean, there was some the sort of like reveal at the end was like. That's not a reveal. You know what I mean? Like
that was good. That was a big moment in the book. That was like the one moment in the book when I was like, okay, I could like this is how it hooked me, and it was like it was interesting that was the hook of that pilot episode was the same.
So
thing.
I think
I don't get I just don't get how this was chosen to be like why they have Rome. Like, why did they make this?
Rome is another good example of
unless there's like crazy crap is going to happen.
Rome is a better example. Is also a good example of what you can do with scope. Rome's scope always felt as big as it should have been.
Yeah.
But also lots of boobs in Rome, dude. I mean, it's Rome, but high fantasy.
What I want is more of blue-eyed guys.
That's
what's
not going to happen.
Guys?
Season 3.
Yeah, I mean, I want but I want more fantasy stuff as opposed to political drama. This could be any.
That's not what this is.
We will see.
Right.
We will see
Yes,
as it goes. So definitely check it out, HBO, and we will be talking about it more, I'm sure. All right, everybody, remember to stick around for this day in rad history. But first, Jeff Kanata, our sponsor.
Today is the perfect day to be talking about Audible.com because Audible.com is a place for you to listen to audiobooks. And if Game of Thrones, the series, tickled your fancy with some fantasy audiobooks, there's tons of fantasy audiobooks on Audible.com. They have over 7,000 titles. So pretty much anything you could possibly imagine as far as fantasy, but specifically the Game of Thrones books. I think the Game of Thrones is spectacularly well written, and if you only experience it as a TV show, I think you're missing out on the beauty of the language that George R.R. Martin uses in the books. And not only that, Roy Dotrice is the reader of those books, and he's one of the very best audiobook readers working today. Highly recommend Game of Thrones, Clash of Kings, Storm of Swords, Feast of Crows, and the upcoming Dance of Dragons. You're going to want to listen to all of them. You could start off with a free book at, if you go to audiblepodcast.com/totallyrad, we'll hook you up.
Very cool.
Listening.
Also, make sure to get your backgrounds in. We have this background, a lovely background we've been featuring all week. But you can send your backgrounds, fans, at totallyradshow.com. Now, we will see you mañana. What are you going to say, Dan?
Mañana.
Hey!
Tomorrow on the show, it's time for our summer movie wager.
Today is April 27th, and on this day in Red History in 1981, Xerox PARC introduced the computer mouse.
Computer mouse?
The mouse, which was promptly stolen by Steve Jobs and added to the Macintosh.
Yep, well, stolen by everybody.
Well, no. It was pretty much stolen by the Macintosh first,
Well,
and then
first.
everybody.
Yeah, exactly, and then everybody.
Yeah.
I was born just a few weeks after this. I'm as old as Mouse.
You're as old as
Actually, Mouse is like your older brother that's like, shut up, Dan. You're like, damn it, Mouse! Keep working!
Do you ever write that on forums and they're like, how old are you?
Mouse.
You know how old the
plus
mouse
3
is?
days?
Mouse plus 3 days. Amazing.
Thank you at Sean String for sending that in.